elders really have a responsibility to speak up for the welfare of future generations. And that's part of our generativity. That's part of what we pass on. So that's why I'm an activist.
Welcome to Sustainability Now, an exploration of technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for socially conscious entrepreneurs and individuals interested in responsible stewardship of the planet. Sustainability Now covers food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome everybody to Sustainability Now, Technologies and Paradigms to Shape a World that Works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and today I'm delighted to introduce to you elder activist Lynne Iser. Lynne founded the elderactivistorg.org website to inspire, educate, and support others primarily on issues concerning climate change and social justice. She serves as board chair of the Elder Action Network and is a member of the steering council of the newly formed Elder Witness, which is a group of Philadelphia elders concerned about immigration rights. Lynne, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and in conversation with you, Mira.
Likewise. So I just want to say to everybody, when I met Lynne, it was at the climate strike in Philadelphia. And I was so inspired to meet somebody who is engaged with activating elders in having a voice in our changing world. So we've got youth movements, we've got elder movements, and obviously sustainability is something that is going to be brought about when we're all engaged with each other. And so I was very inspired to meet you, Lynne, and very excited to have you here and share with us what these organizations are and what inspired your involvement in elder activism.
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I just want to remind you that when we met, it was on the plaza at the City Hall in Philadelphia, and it was really, really crowded, and there were lots of people. And I was with 4 or 5 friends, and we were all wearing these elder activist t-shirts. And I think that's one of the reasons you stopped. And of course, we were chatting and having fun and just looking at amazement in all these young people that were coming forth. They were groups of students from schools, and we were so pleased to see these large numbers of people, but large groups of people coming together. And there was just this air of excitement. So, and it was great to kind of bump into each other and feel that instant excitement between us. You asked me how I became engaged as an elder activist?
Yes.
That's a good question. There's several answers. One is when my daughter, who's now 26, was a teenager, she was feeling really troubled and still is about the state of the world. And many times would bemoan, I wish the world was different. I wish it was the 50s when you grew up. Now, of course, the 50s weren't perfect, nor any other time in history. But I recognized her angst. And when I listened, I heard it in myself as well, looking around at the world and knowing that 10 years ago we were facing severe climate issues and feeling like I could do something about that. I was now at a time of my life when I didn't need to be home making dinner. I didn't need to be helping somebody with their homework or driving them somewhere. If I got home a little late or I went out to a meeting, that was okay. They were old enough to be by themselves. And I started myself getting more engaged in seeing what's out there, who's doing what can we do to address the issues that were so important then and still are. I wasn't much of an activist when I was younger. I did grow up in the 60s and came of age in the late 60s and went to college then, and of course was impacted by all that went on. But I wasn't a big political activist. But I've become one as I've grown older, believing that elders really have a responsibility to speak up for the welfare of future generations. And
Absolutely.
and that's part of our generativity. That's part of what we pass on. So that's why I'm an activist.
So was there one particular issue that really spurred you to action?
At that time, I was most concerned with climate change, and I'm
Mhm.
still very concerned with climate change. In between, I've explored issues around racism and white privilege and uh,
Social justice.
the social justice issues that have also been so important. Mass incarceration. Michelle Alexander's work was epic in opening up what happens to Black men in particular. So those all became things that I've learned about in the meantime. And I circled back to see that climate change is really a critically important issue in this day and in this hour, in this year. And I
Absolutely.
think that is taking a great deal of my attention.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Elder Action Network and what their work is. And it's a national organization.
Yes, it is. Thank you for asking. I was thrilled when I found other people that shared the same interest as I, because there are not many people or organizations that just gather elders together to talk about issues that are important to all. There's many organizations that talk about Social Security or ageism or important issues, but that wasn't what was important to me. So Elders Action Network was started with a group of people on the West Coast. And we've come together in the intervening years, 6, 7, 8 years that we've been together now. And we're working together to build a movement of elders addressing the social and environmental issues of our time. And it's a little broad because we all have different issues. Some people are very concerned with education in the schools or gun violence or healthcare. And those are all important issues. So we want to say they're all important issues. What's your passion? And get people to speak up for that.
So, being that this is a show about sustainability, we're particularly interested in what kind of actions uh, you guys are taking to address those issues of climate change and sustainability and environmental concerns.
So I'm going to switch that around a little bit if you'll let me. And I'll say that part of sustainability is sharing the knowledge, creating the legacies that we have through a lifetime of experience and maybe perspective and maybe a bit of wisdom. So it's about sharing values. I feel like as an elder, a piece of my work of sustainability is being sure that I can pass on the values that I know are important and speak up for them.
Hi, this is Scott, co-founder of Sustainability Now. I wanted to remind you that resources and links related to this episode can be found on our website, sustainabilitynow.global. While you're there, consider signing up for a monthly membership to help us keep the show going. This year, we will be adding live events, long-form reporting, and interactive content. We started Sustainability Now as a passion project, and until this point, we've been completely self-funded. Your contribution will ensure that we can continue to build community, inspire hope, and share solutions. Thanks, and remember that together we can shape a world that works.
You know, you and I had a conversation about elders and youth, and I think the conversation with the youth at this moment that is really active, I'm going to challenge you. So it just going to give you a warning here, that the youth would probably say your values are what got us into this trouble in the first place. Not you specifically, but elders, like our generation is responsible for a big part of the problem that exists. And there are certain values that have driven our generation, that are kind of at the crux of the situation in the world at this time.
Well, since we're pushing each other, I'll push back. And I'll
Okay.
say that I don't know that the values are what created the problems and the issues that we now are living with. I think consumerism and marketing are really at the crux of many of the issues we have, which is that we're using too many resources, which is why the climate issues exist in a little nutshell.
So I just want to call out, let me just call out the values that I'm addressing.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the values that I see that have been prevalent, that really we all need to change globally in order to create the transformation on the planet that we are looking for, is our value around money. That
Mm,
money kind of has been the primary driver for any kind of growth and valuation of benefit in the world. And so the value for a long time, not for all of us. I mean, there are a
yep.
number of us, but culturally,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, so the thing around money being the profit
Hmm.
as primary, that is a value that we have evidenced as a culture for quite some time. So that's something that really needs shifting. And another value is convenience.
Hmm.
We have valued convenience over sustainability and planetary health, in so many ways, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So those are values that we need to look at and see what have been the impacts of those values.
Absolutely.
And as an elder with a long-term vision, can I look back at those values and say, are they good values that we want to sustain and continue to hold up? Or are those values or drivers in our society and culture that we want to say, these don't work? We've seen the impact of them. And the real value is not to have more money, because deep inside of me, we all know you can't take it with you. Money doesn't create happiness, because it does make the ability to have an easier life, more time, but doesn't necessarily always provide happiness. And certainly I know rich people can be just as miserable and dissatisfied and
It's true.
malcontent
It's
as
true.
a person without means. And actually, I know that to be a fact, that that isn't where we get our contentment or happiness or sense of satisfaction. And I think that's a little piece of elder wisdom, that how can we learn to share that in a way that's important? How do we raise that back up as a value and say, it's not so important to be able to go out for dinner 2 or 3 times a week. It's really much better to stay home and have a simple meal and hang out with your family, or sit back and put your feet up and sit on your front porch and maybe meet your neighbor, watch your neighbors go by, or chat, or play, watch the kids in the street, which we don't do very much anymore. So how do we change those? How do we not only change the values, but recognize the values that have enduring um, benefit for us?
So now that I've poked the bear,
Uh-huh.
I want to come
Go.
back. I want to come back around to
Sure.
say, um, as a culture, in so many ways, we have marginalized elders,
Hmm.
and the attitude of "you did it wrong, you don't know," kind of allows people to be dismissive. And really, truly, when we come back around to it, as elders, we do have the benefit of life's wisdom and experience, and also knowledge of um, m- connection with nature too. If we
Hmm.
go back into the elders' history and wisdom from indigenous peoples, and from the ways that we did things in this world before we had all these conveniences, and so much of where we're headed is actually going backward to go forward, in necessity, like to recover, retrieve the gifts. Yes.
Right, exactly. A little assessment of our lives. What's been working? What hasn't been working? What has been powerful? What has provided good results? If you would just want to look at it that way, and that's actually what I've learned is the work of an elder. That as we get older, we all do a bit of life review of our earlier times, and hopefully, when we do that life review, we kind of look for the nuggets of what's important to us, that we want to tell those stories to ourselves and others. That's what wisdom or history or storytelling has traditionally been about. And I don't want to romanticize this, but it's so important. I was just talking to my cousin yesterday. I'm the youngest of the youngest of the youngest to my family. So my next cousin is 18 years older than I am, so of course is in a different stage of life. But she was telling me, I tell my grandchildren the stories of my grandparents, our grandparents. They don't know anything about them, and they like to hear the stories. It's important for them to hear it. And I was so glad to hear she was doing that. She's a pretty simple, grounded woman. And, it's nice to speak to somebody who shares a life history with you and has a remembrance of your ancestors.
That's true. That's true. And even in I just want to circle back actually to one of the things that you said. As elders, many of us have the freedom and time
Yes.
and resources to be able to be active and influential in shifting the direction of politics and of commerce even,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
So I want to steer back to some practical actions. I know I totally respect and have reverence for the value of the wisdom that is shared, and that is not in any way to be underrated. And I'm also really curious about, as elder activists, what kind of actions are you bringing into the world?
So I am leaping out of my seat because I want to tell you about this. So, for example, tomorrow I'm going to Washington, D.C. with my partner and a friend of ours because Jane Fonda, who many of us know for many, many reasons, is now on a new campaign. She's moved to Washington, and every Friday she's having a rally in front of the Capitol at 11 o'clock with other people and is risking arrest and getting arrested on the steps of the Capitol.
A la Greta Thunberg.
Exactly.
Right.
And she has this marvelous video on her website. She calls it Fire Drill Fridays.
I love it.
She is standing with and supporting and on the shoulders of our youth who are saying the house is on fire and we have to do something. And she has decided to do something. And
oh, that's beautiful.
At 81 years of age.
Beautiful. So
amazing.
For those of you who don't know, Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old activist from Sweden who has been camping out on the parliament steps every Friday and has motivated millions of students globally to do the same, saying our house is on fire. And so now Jane Fonda's bringing in the elders with it. That is brilliant.
Right. Right. Well, she has recognized, she has done some reading. She's read the newest book by Naomi Klein, which I believe is called House is on Fire. I forget the name right now, but we should.
Okay.
And
just for everybody listening, we'll make sure to have the link for that book on our website at sustainabilitynow.global instead of .com. Great.
And she references the book in her video and in her work, and also references the Green New Deal as a pathway going forward to address issues of climate change, to bring in marginal communities who are being most affected by climate change, to bring in retraining of workers that might be now working in the coal industry or the fossil fuel industry, and to be sure that we bring them along into renewable resources. And those renewable resources are out there. They are powering other countries and movements, and the power in other countries for people to have electricity and all the needs that we have using wind and solar and geothermal. So we can do it. We just haven't had the political will. And I see the young people as being the ones pushing it because it's their future. They're saying, if we can't do anything about this, we don't have a future.
And I think what's happening with the young people is that they are inspiring the rest of us to actually have a voice.
Yes.
I think there's been such a deep complacency or resignation in many ways. And the inspiration of the youth is catching fire. And Jane Fonda's on it. You're on it.
Go Jane.
Yes.
Well, I know that many times I feel a great sense of despair, like, what are we going to do? The world just feels, especially climate change issues, feel so enormous to me. And I just don't see how these changes are going to get made. And seeing the young people out there, and they're organized and they know how to use social media and they get things done with an enormous amount of energy, and they can, stay up late at night and work 12, 14, 16 hours a day and go, go, go. It gives me great hope. I want to stand with them. And I want to say, in my looking at some of these youth movements, like even the gun violence movement, the Youth Against Gun Violence, when we were young and we had issues that we were standing up for, many times our parents did not stand with us. They grew up in another age and they believed that consumerism was good. They believed that time-saving devices were like an important, wonderful thing to have. They were climbing the ladder of mobility, and we were questioning it a little bit. From this perspective, we can look back and go, maybe it's not so good. Maybe we do need to stand with the youth. Maybe we can acknowledge that living in smaller houses or shared houses or other ways of living might be more sustainable. When you want to talk about sustainability, that is to me what sustainability is about. How do we live in a sustainable culture where young people and old people might even live together?
Exactly. Bringing back the notion of community, real community,
Yes.
Instead of the isolation that we have been driven into by our acquisitional kind of gestalt that we've been part of.
Right.
Yeah.
When my son and daughter-in-law returned to the United States after living abroad for many years, because she was raised in China, so they lived there for many years, they came and they lived with us. And it was delightful. There was sufficient space for them. And they hauled out the trash cans and they shoveled the snow, or they helped us to shovel the snow, and they did stuff in the yard. And it was nice sharing a house with them. We'd eat dinner together, and then I would go off and do my stuff, and they would go off and do their stuff. And there was no obligation to hang out together, but we could enjoy a dinner together, or check, do you want to make dinner tonight? I was thinking of making dinner tonight. It was a very pleasant way to live together. And my husband and I both appreciated how nice it was to have adult children living with you, to live in a household like that. And I could certainly see how that would be helpful when young people have babies and little ones, like somebody else to play with their child, to watch them when you just need to get out for a walk for half an hour. That is what helps us all to grow, is to be able to help us like that, to live together like that.
Yeah. So developing new, old values of community and family, and householding collectively, like collective support, rather than separating off our old people and putting them in their own little circles. And
Right.
Yes.
The feeling that you have to move out of your parents' house. When I was traveling in Central America and Mexico, when people have a job and they start to earn money, they add on to the family compound, and they build themselves a room or two in the compound, and that's their space where they are going to live, and they can choose how much they want to engage with the rest of the family. But the family's there. The social fabric of the family or the community remains intact or strengthened or added to. That's the real web of social connection that we need. And
I mean, I see, maybe it's not even your genetic family,
Right.
We just create a community that's representative of all different people together, right? Integrated in age and cultural tradition, collective working together.
Right.
Yeah.
When when my son was younger, we had a really nice little house on one of these row house blocks in Philadelphia, and I was a single parent for many, many years at that time. And my neighbors across the street had two little children, and so I was a little bored living with this teenage boy. And I would go across the street and visit them. They had these two cute little kids, and I'd grab a kid, bring them back to the house. We'd watch the cat eat or do whatever we were doing. And there was this flow back and forth with this other family that felt very easy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and met all our needs. And it just extended the size of our families. It was a very lovely um, social piece that really helped to enrich my life at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm going to circle us back to actions.
Okay, let's go back to actions.
So we have Jane Fonda,
Mhm.
and it's called Firehouse, did you say?
Fire Drill Fridays.
Fire Drill Fridays.
That would
Wonderful.
be right. Great thing to put up for people to note
Yes.
on the web.
We will have a link to that on sustainabilitynow.global.
She also has a Thursday evening kind of teach-in on Facebook. Now she's doing every Thursday at 7:00 about a different issue each week about the climate and the environment. So people can check into that. And today's Thursday for us, but might not be when people listen to it, but certainly can check in on Thursday nights and give them that link. So what are the other ways to be involved? Well, there is a group called Elders Climate Action. That is a subgroup of Elders Action Network. And they've been working for 6 or 7 years now on climate issues. They have a voter registration project to get environmental voters not only registered, but voting. They're and along they also have chapters. They encourage people to form chapters in their regions or their states so they can identify the local issues that are important as well as the national issues. So there's one group that I really love because they are pulling elders together. And when we come together, we're excited because we strengthen each other. We get to support each other. We get to talk about the issues. And you're not doing it alone. You're doing it with newly developing friends or old friends.
At what point, at what age does one become an elder?
Oh, that's always a tricky question. So I would say it's not really an age.
Right.
But becoming an elder is the product of looking at your life and maybe harvesting a bit of your life experience and using that experience and wisdom or perspective to guide the decisions of this last part of your life, whether it be the last third or the last quarter, in which you really want to complete your life. Like, how do you complete your life so that when you die, you feel satisfied that, things are good. And for many of us, completing our lives means creating some kind of a legacy.
Exactly.
For my mother, it was photo albums, it was spending time with her grandchildren. What is it that you want to leave to other people?
And I think, it's interesting for me, 2 years ago, I connected with my life purpose, and I would consider that I'm an elder at this point for sure. And that has given me a whole new life. So, being an elder doesn't mean being done.
No, not at all.
It can mean getting started.
Right.
And really, really making a difference in the world and leaving a profound legacy of growth and change and positive impact.
Right. We like to say anybody can grow old, but it takes work to become an elder.
I love that distinction.
Nice? Yes. And it is a time of life. It's not just, you become an elder and then you just go off and die. This is a time in which you have certain benefits. You perhaps don't have to work as much, or you don't have the children under your feet, but you do have time for reflection and action and engagement and being part of councils and communities and actions. So you asked me about other actions.
Yeah.
So I'm a part of this group in Philadelphia that's newly formed called Elder Witness. And we have concerns about some of the immigration policies of our country right now. And really what brought us together were the concerns about how children are being separated from their parents. And we recognize that people have different opinions about what policy should be, who should come into the country, how they should come into the country. And those are all valid and legitimate questions to, engage in and create policies. But we know that it's wrong to separate children from their parents. It's harmful, and they didn't do anything wrong. And the impact is long lasting. So we've gathered around that, and we've had some actions. We've showed up together. We've written letters together. We've protested together. And we've educated ourselves together. So again, it was an opportunity for people that felt really concerned about an issue, but didn't know what to do about it and felt, kind of bad. I have this concern, but I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And we got together in somebody's living room and planned a few things to do. And there's a sense of now we're doing something and we have other people to talk with about what we're doing and what we feel we need to discuss and what could happen. What can we do?
There's
What
a huge
actions?
huge power in connecting with other people
Mhm,
and empowering one another to take action. And the power in action is self-empowerment.
mhm.
And that becomes contagious, because when we each know that we can make a difference, we can spur other people to make a difference as well.
Exactly. I've met some women in the last year or two that formed a group called Grandmothers Against Gun Violence,
Hmm.
and they're out in Seattle. And they happened to form because I think it was after Sandy Hook, a couple of friends were just going out for dinner together, a planned dinner, and they were bemoaning what had happened and going, what can we do? This is terrible that children should be shot in a school, in their school. And they got together and formed this group, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. They've been pulling together other people, and they've been effective in the city of Seattle in some of the laws that have been passed through city council in Seattle itself. So they're a
That's
very
wonderful.
well-known group. They've spurned some other chapters because somebody heard them about them and decided to do another chapter. So I know there's one in Cape Cod, and there's about 6 in the country. And here they are feeling like they are addressing an issue. So why is this sustainability? I think our children need to know that they're safe, and they need to know that it's not their responsibility as a school child to create that safety. It's our responsibility. And that's a caring for them.
Yeah.
That makes them feel safe and allows them to develop and be the best little human beings that they can be and go into be adults that are happy and effective in the world.
Now you actually have started your own website as well.
Yes, I started a website called elderactivist.org about 7 or 8 years ago.
Hmm.
And I did that because I was interested in elders and becoming activists, and nobody had any information about it on the internet at all. I would search the internet. So there was nothing there at that time against Grandmothers Against Gun Violence or Elders Action Network or Elders Climate Action. So I started a website using some of the resources that had been helpful to me at that time to understand a perspective of the world, where we were, how we got here, what we could do about it, and sharing some of those resources. So I don't keep it as up to date as I should because I'm doing this other work with Elders Action Network, but it still is a great resource for people that want to say, how can I get started? What can I do? How can I think about becoming more of an activist?
And so would you just repeat the URL for your website for everyone?
Sure. It's elder-activists with an s.org.
And that also will be posted at sustainabilitynow.global. So you'll have all kinds of resources available to you there.
Great.
And one of the reasons that I wanted to highlight the fact that you'd started this website is just to keep reinforcing that we all have a voice, we can all make a difference, whether it's one of us or we gather with some friends to have letter writing campaigns or phone call campaigns or protesting together.
Those are all important. There's a group in my community that gets together on Friday afternoons from 2 to 4 at a local coffee shop, and they write postcards together. And each week people bring issues that are important to them, or they come and they say, this legislator did this, let's write them a postcard and thank her. And so they do both thank you for what you've done and please look at this issue because we believe this, and they educate each other and they have coffee and they chat and they talk, and 20, 30 people come together. It's marvelous.
Wow.
Sometimes only 10 or 6, and they it's building community, and you don't have to get out in the streets if you feel you don't want to be in the streets, or you don't want to be, quote, angry. That's okay.
And you can be in the streets without being angry too.
Absolutely.
I saw such joy, and I got such inspiration and hope out of being at the climate march. It was remarkable to see that really people are committed to a better future for everyone.
Right. So I want to say something about those feelings for a moment. I believe that it's important for us to honor our feelings, our anger, our frustration, our despair, maybe our sense of isolation with an issue we have, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to move forward. That sitting with those feelings helps us to understand what's important to us. And when we link what's important to us to how we feel, we do get a sense of motivation. We do say, I'm going to call my friend Sandy because she also is concerned about X, Y, and Z. And we'll go out and talk about this, and let's see if we can't do something.
Well, you just highlighted something really important. A number of people go from resignation to denial.
Right.
And the opportunity is to go from resignation to action.
Right.
Yeah.
And coming together, I say some people don't want to be angry and in the streets because that's what people have said to me. Oh, I don't want to be an angry activist. But the truth is, as you're saying, is when you get together and you're in the streets, you actually feel powerful and you feel happy because you're together with other people expressing what's important to you, whatever the issue is. It doesn't have to be my issue or my political belief, but whatever the issue is, you feel like I've got friends that share this with me. We can do something about this.
Yes.
And that's what's important for us, is that we can do something to, as you know, sustain and grow what's important to us. That's
absolutely. So Lynne, are there any books that you would recommend for folks to be looking at about related to elder activism or related to activism in general? So a book that's been tremendously inspiring to you in your mission, or any other resources?
Well, there's a few authors that I think are really excellent. Naomi Klein has written really so clearly and powerfully about climate change issues. And she has several books that have come out in the last 3 or 4 years. And I would any of her books. I would also look at the books of Charles Eisenstein, who is a philosopher and stands for, well, I think the title of one of his books was The Most Beautiful World Your Heart Knows Is Possible. So how do we reach out, recognize what we want for the future, and then help to bring that forward? The other thing that I recommend is that there's an online activism course by the Pachamama Alliance called the Game Changer Intensive. The Game Changer Intensive, it's like 6 or 8 sessions.
And also Awakening the Dreamer.
And Awakening the Dreamer. So both of those are excellent. But the Game Changer Intensive recognizes that, quote, the system is rigged, which are pretty powerful words. But as we listen to what's happening now with the Ukraine and politics and what's underneath the radar, or even what was on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer today about our legislators going to Europe and using their campaign money to have these like week in Europe for $15,000 doing amazing things that have absolutely nothing to do with the campaign. We know that funds are being spent in an irresponsible manner. So how do we learn about that? And the Game Changer Intensive is really good about teaching us about some of the underlying truths that are behind sometimes the facade of our democracy.
Yeah. I
love the words of, I'm forgetting his name. It was a very famous Black civil rights activist who talked about the fact that our democracy is an experiment that we are still working on and perfecting.
That's true.
Because sometimes we look and we go, oh, this is like ruined. this is no good. But the truth is, it's good, and we are growing it. And we need to be appreciative of what we have and the values we have, the democracy we have, the country that we have, the freedoms that we have, and really stand up for it rather than throwing it out.
Yes, and be alert to improving it ongoingly.
Yes, absolutely. It is so essential.
Yes.
So essential for us to defend this.
So, Lynn, I am delighted that you were here with us today. This has been a really fun conversation for me. I hope it has for you too.
Me too. I've loved
Okay.
having these conversations. It's important to bring this stuff up.
I think so too. And I'm wondering, is there anything I should have asked that I didn't ask in order to wrap things up for today?
I'm thinking hard here. Well, one of the things we touched on was about youth and elders working together. And do we have the values and the knowledge and the wisdom? We do, and so do they. So it's so important to look for that reciprocity, that they have a perspective that has great truth in it. It might not have what we consider to be long-term, enduring wisdom or perspective, but they've got a perspective that's really true and honest, and we can listen to, and they have a lot of skills we can learn from. Be
Absolutely.
more effective. So let's work together, not just claim that we've got the answers, because we don't have the answers. And honestly, they don't have all the answers, but together we can possibly create a better future for
I
all of us
love
and
that.
for all our children.
I love that.
Yeah. And I like to think of, when I define my future, I like to think of it as thriving and just, that it has that piece of life to it. It's not a static sense of what do we think would be sustainable or green or any of those things, but that it's regenerative and it's healthy and it cares for everybody. And that's so important for us to keep in mind and consider, what do we want to feed? Where do we want to put our energy? So let me leave you with the seventh generation teaching of the Native American communities that have lived here, tribes that have lived here for a long time. And we've heard about the seventh generation thoughts.
Not everybody understands what it is, so maybe.
Yes, and it's good to remember. So what the piece that I like is that we make decisions thinking, keeping in mind the generations, 7 generations from now. So that when I make a decision about what do I want to do in my backyard, do I want to cut down a tree or plant a tree? What would be best for my great, 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 great grandchildren? Or the great, 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 great grandchildren of whoever might be living here. So that would be helpful for us to think about and re-embody that long-term thinking.
I love it. What a great note to end our conversation. Lynn, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy we've met and that we had this conversation.
Me
And
too.
it spurs other wonderful conversations for other people.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. So the encouragement is to gather people together, whatever age you are, talk about the concerns, find actions you can take together to make a difference, and know that your voice counts. And with that, I want to say thank you to all of you, our listeners. You are the ones that collectively will change the world. And on that note, I also want to thank our producer, Scott Billy. And that's it for today. Until next time, live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now. Visit sustainabilitynow.global to find resources related to today's program. While you're there, pledge your support by making a contribution to help us shape a world that works. And remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.